Boulder this morning. It looks extremely hazy. I'll have to find out if this is normal smog or if it's part of the California wildfires. I'm here at the Boulder, Colorado Supercharger, and they've got two elements that I've not seen before. One is that they have a prohibition of charging more than 40 minutes maximum. And secondly, they use time of day pricing. As you can see, if you charge before 11 a.m. or after 5 p.m., it only costs 15 cents per kilowatt hour, which is by far the cheapest I've ever seen. Since it was before 11 a.m. when I charged, I looked at my bill, and sure enough, I had 13 kilowatts at a unit price of 14 cents per kilowatt hour for a total bill of $1.95, including tax. Rather than 15 cents per kilowatt hour, I was actually only charged 14 cents. Such a deal. I went to Georgia Tech with Ed, the gentleman on the left, and while we both did well academically, when it came to our electrical engineering courses, Ed could solve a problem in half the time I did. He just had an intuition about it that I didn't have. After graduation, our paths diverged as I got an MBA and ended up in finance and corporate development, while Ed got a PhD in electrical engineering and became a professor at Georgia Tech. He was one of the leading figures in antenna theory at Georgia Tech and perhaps in the world. After he retired, or at least semi-retired, he and his wife Pat bought a beautiful piece of property northwest of Boulder, which consisted of 35 acres on top of a mountain. So I'm here with Ed Joy at this beautiful house he's built, and we're on his overlook. And tell me about this, Ed.
Well, the overlook itself is, we had a brick mason, Randy, and I said, Randy, I would like to build me an overlook, but I want to help. And Randy says, well, I'm going to have to charge you more for that. so we built this, and it was a lot of fun doing it. In the far distance there's a mountain range, part of the Rocky Mountains, called the Front Range. And that mountain right in the middle, shaped like a sawtooth, is called, strangely enough, Mount Sawtooth.
Great name.
And that is the Continental Divide. And there is a teeny bit of snow here in the late part of August. And our first snow will be coming next month.
Is that snow to the left of that little gag?
That's right.
That's snow, okay.
In the valley
Yeah.
there.
Uh-huh.
They were called glaciers in the old brochures, but they're not actually glaciers. They are actually called permanent snow fields. A glacier actually has to move to be called a glacier.
Okay. And this mountain is how tall over here in the foreground?
And the Mount Sawtooth?
Yeah, how tall is that one?
That's about 12.
Consistent with Ed's personality as a hands-on engineer, he built much of this house himself. He obviously had a contractor pour the foundations, do the framing, plumbing, but he did all the electrical work, all the trim work, installed the cabinets. Took him, I think, close to 5 years to totally finish it. But is it a spectacular place? I suspect his shop was one of the first rooms to be finished. Then there's the instrument room, which features industrial quality electronic test and instrumentation. Engineering graduate worth his salt has always at least thought about being a ham radio operator, but check out this setup. My company had radio stations with control rooms smaller than this, I think. Of course, the setup for any ham operator is only as good as his antennas, and Ed personally built these 4 log periodic antennas along with some HF antennas, which I would think would allow him to communicate all over the world. Unfortunately, while I was visiting, There was a lot of smoke from the western forest fires, but the views were still spectacular. Ed sent me a few pictures of the view from his porch at night. How about this view from the to the south of Pikes Peak? I would guess that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 miles. I wasn't familiar with this, but it's a program designed to encourage homeowners to provide food, water, and cover for wildlife in their area. After I left Ed's home, it took me a while to wind down the mountain. Then I turned left and headed north into Wyoming. This is a good tip for Tesla owners, but it works with some other vehicles as well. While in the comfort of your home or hotel room, go to Google Maps, type in the name of the place you're trying to navigate to, hit enter, then share it with the icon that represents your vehicle, in my case, Tesla. Then you simply go to your car and the navigation is there. My friend Sam suggested I read Cattle Kingdom, so I downloaded it yesterday and am reading it and listening to the Audible book. It's more of a story of the economics of the cattle industry, which was substantial in the late 1800s. It is estimated that the cattle industry was the largest industry in the United States during that period of time, and the epicenter was Cheyenne, Wyoming. By the mid-1880s, Cheyenne had the highest median per capita income of any city in the world. There are a number of reasons for this. Among them, bison were virtually extinct because they had been overhunted, and there were only 300 or so left south of Canada. Taking their place were open-range cattle trailed in primarily from Texas to feed on the vast prairie grasses in Wyoming. In those days, it was entirely possible to double, triple, or even quadruple your money in a single season. So it attracted enormous amounts of capital, not only from the United States financiers on the East Coast, but from English and Scottish investors. Like a lot of other boom cycles, this one did not end well, but that's a story for another day. So upon arriving in Cheyenne, the first thing I did was take a drive around town. So here's a quick overview at 3 times the speed. Of course, Cheyenne is the capital of Wyoming, and they had a very impressive Capitol building, I thought. So I just came across an automobile happening right here at the state capitol for Wyoming. I don't really understand this, but I just talked to this gentleman over here and his wife in this Citroen. And apparently the idea is that you bring old cars, or interesting cars, can be anything, and You just sort of drive around, and then you lap the square, as they say up in North Georgia, and people sit down and have a drink, watch all that. Apparently, this doesn't start really until about an hour from now, so these are just the early comers, and they tell me it's going to be absolutely packed in about an hour. But I'm not sure I'll be here for that. I'm not sure this is an antique, but it's certainly something I've never seen before. I found it interesting that this gathering was right in the shadow of the state capitol, and yet there were no police or organized protesters. It just seems like a nice, medium-sized town to live in.